I never thought betrayal would find me inside the walls of my own home. My name is Alex. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed that marriage was supposed to be a fortress, a place where you could come home from the world and know that nothing outside could touch you. My wife Melanie and I had been together for 7 years. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue in Denver. She was 23 back then, in her final year of college, and she had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the conversation. I was smitten. We married 4 years later, and for the most part, I thought we were doing fine. We fought sometimes about chores, about my long hours in construction project management, about her tendency to scroll on her phone until midnight, but nothing that ever felt like it could break us. We'd even started talking about kids one day. Not soon, we both said, maybe after we bought a bigger house, maybe when work slowed down, maybe when life felt ready. Life didn't wait for us to feel ready. It was a rainy Thursday in March when she came out of the bathroom with a plastic stick in her hand, her face pale and glowing at the same time. "Alex," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm pregnant." I stared at her, my brain taking too long to process the words. Then I laughed, half nervous, half joyous, and pulled her into a hug so tight she squeaked. We danced in the kitchen like idiots, her in pajama pants, me in steel-toe boots still dusty from work. I told her it was the best news of my life. We didn't plan it, but I felt this surge of excitement. I imagined teaching a son how to ride a bike or braiding a daughter's hair before school. I called my brother that night and told him he was going to be an uncle. He shouted through the phone like we'd won the Super Bowl. For the first few weeks, it was everything I thought it would be. Melanie complained of nausea, of exhaustion, of weird food cravings. I did what any decent husband would, ran to the store at midnight for ginger ale, set up extra pillows for her back, cooked bland pasta when she couldn't stand the smell of garlic. I thought, this is what love is, caring for her when she needs me most. But then small things started to shift. At first, it was the phone. She used to leave it lying around on the counter, on the couch, sometimes forgotten in the car. Suddenly, it was glued to her hand. She brought it into the bathroom, slid it under her pillow at night. If it buzzed, she'd tilt the screen away before unlocking it. Then came the walks. She started saying she needed fresh air in the evenings, that walking helped with the pregnancy fatigue. I offered to go with her, but she waved me off. "No, babe, you rest. I just need some alone time." I told myself it was hormones, or stress, or her way of processing this huge change. Don't be paranoid, I thought. She's carrying your child. But the distance grew. Our intimacy, already strained by nausea and tiredness, vanished completely. Every time I touched her, she'd flinch and say she was too sore, too tired. Weeks turned into months, and one night as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, it hit me. The timing didn't make sense. We hadn't been intimate in almost a month before she told me she was pregnant. I counted back the dates. The math worked out barely. But doubt had planted a seed in my chest, and once it sprouted, I couldn't kill it. The first real crack came at the 12-week ultrasound. We sat in the dim room, the monitor glowing with grainy black and white images. The technician pointed out the flicker of a heartbeat. I felt tears sting my eyes. That's my child, I thought, my legacy, my family. I looked at Melanie, expecting her to be radiant with joy. Instead, she looked guilty, like she was hiding in plain sight. That night, while she sat at the kitchen table scrolling, I overheard her whispering into her phone. "I told him, yeah, he doesn't suspect anything." My stomach dropped. I stepped into the room. "Who was that?" She jumped. "Just a coworker. We're finalizing a campaign." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. So I nodded and pretended it didn't slice me open. Weeks passed. At 16 weeks, the bump was visible. She glowed in public, joked with friends, let strangers congratulate her. To everyone else, she was the perfect expectant mother. To me, she was slipping further away. One night, after she went to bed early, I sat in the living room staring at her phone on the counter. My heart pounded in my throat. I had never gone through her things before. It felt wrong. But the silence of the house screamed at me, "Do it! Find out!" I picked it up. Locked. She'd added a passcode. My chest ached with betrayal. That was new. That was deliberate. A week later, opportunity came. She left the phone in her coat pocket while showering. My hands shook as I opened it. She had carelessly used the same code as her birthday. The messages were gone. She'd deleted them. But scraps remained. Calendar entries with cryptic initials, Uber receipts to hotels downtown, a photo of a wine glass. She'd told me she wasn't drinking at all. And then I found it, a contact saved only as R. The most recent message read, "Are you sure he doesn't suspect? I don't know how long I can keep this up." The world tilted. I dropped the phone like it burned me. The next morning, I confronted her. "Who's R?" I asked, my voice trembling. Her fork froze midway to her mouth. She blinked too fast. "Just a friend." "Friend? Friends don't book hotel rooms. Friends don't text you about secrets." Her eyes filled with tears. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing, "Alex, I made a mistake." That word mistake felt like acid. She admitted she'd been seeing a colleague, that it had started as messages, escalated to flirting, then one night after drinks at a conference, it went further. "Just once," she swore. "It didn't mean anything." My hands clenched so hard they ached. "Are you telling me this baby might not be mine?" Her silence was an answer sharper than a knife. I had always thought betrayal would come like lightning. One flash, one strike, and the damage is done. But this was different. It was slower, heavier, like drowning with your eyes open. After Melanie admitted she had been with someone else, my world tilted. She begged me to believe it was just one night, that she hadn't planned it, that she still loved me. But the question had already lodged itself in my skull. Whose child is she carrying? I couldn't let it go. We sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence between us. "I need a DNA test," I said finally. Her face twisted like I'd slapped her. "Alex, no. That's cruel. This is your baby. You can't doubt that." "I can't not doubt it," I shot back, my voice cracking. "You just admitted you slept with someone else right around the time you got pregnant. Do you expect me to just ignore that?" Her hand shook as she pulled at a tissue. "It was a mistake. One night. I was drunk. I was upset with you. It didn't mean anything. Please, don't do this to me." "Do this to you?" I leaned forward, rage bubbling. "You did this to us. You did this to me. The least you can do is give me the truth." She cried harder, but I didn't budge. Finally, she whispered, "Fine, if that's what it takes." The test wasn't immediate. We scheduled a non-invasive prenatal DNA test, the kind that could compare my blood sample with hers and the baby's. They told us results could take 2 to 3 weeks. Those weeks stretched like years. Every morning I woke up beside her, my mind split in half. One part wanted to hold her, to protect her, to care for the woman carrying a life. The other part wanted to scream, to demand answers, to rage at her for turning what should have been the happiest time of our lives into hell. I went to work and snapped at my crew for no reason. I skipped lunch because food tasted like sand. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while she breathed softly beside me. Sometimes she would reach for me in her sleep, her hand brushing my arm, and I would flinch like her touch burned. I hated myself for still loving her. One night, unable to sleep, I asked the question that had been eating me alive. Was it only once? She was silent for a long time. Then, in the darkness, she whispered, "Twice." The knife twisted deeper. "When?" "The first time was at the conference. The second was 2 weeks later. I ended it after that. I swear, Alex, I swear." I turned away from her, my fists clenched in the sheets. 2 weeks later, that was exactly the time the baby could have been conceived. "Why him?" I asked, my throat raw. She sniffled. "He listened to me. He made me feel wanted. You were always tired, distracted with work. I was lonely." "I was working to provide for us," I snapped. "For our family." "I know," she whispered. "I know, and I hate myself. Please don't leave me." Her words curled around me like smoke, suffocating but impossible to ignore. The results came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, in the middle of a safety briefing, when my phone buzzed with an email notification. My stomach dropped. I excused myself, locked myself in the truck, and opened the email with shaking hands. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Relief flooded me, hot and dizzying. The baby was mine. But then came the second wave, rage. Because even though the child was mine, she had still betrayed me. She had still lied. She had still made me doubt my own fatherhood. I cried in that truck until my chest ached. Not from sadness, from grief for the life I thought I had, for the wife I thought I knew. That night, I handed her the printed results. "He's mine," she cried, this time tears of joy. She rushed forward to hug me, but I stepped back. "Don't!" Her face crumpled. "Alex, please, this means we can move on. We can start fresh." "Start fresh?" I laughed bitterly. You burned down the house, and now you're asking me to pretend it's just new paint." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. "I don't know what else to do. I love you. I love our baby. I made a horrible mistake, but I want us to be a family." I wanted to believe her. God help me, part of me still did. But another part of me screamed that love built on lies would always rot. Her friends threw her a baby shower at 6 months. I went, plastering on a smile, shaking hands, listening to jokes about dad life. Everyone told me how lucky I was, how glowing she looked, how beautiful our little family would be. I wanted to scream at them all she cheated. She almost gave me another man's child. Instead, I smiled and cut the cake. Later that night, when the house was quiet again, I sat in the nursery we painted together. The walls were a soft green, little forest animals dancing across them. I ran my hand over the crib rail and whispered, "I'll be here for you, no matter what, even if she isn't." The day our son was born, everything else vanished. The contractions came in the middle of the night. I drove her to the hospital with adrenaline pounding, gripping her hand through every wave of pain. When I first heard his cry, when they placed him in my arms, I thought my heart would explode. He was tiny, red-faced, perfect. In that moment, I felt nothing but love. Love so fierce, it terrified me. But even in that sacred moment, a shadow lingered, because while I stared at my son, my brain whispered, "She almost took this from you." The first weeks with a newborn are brutal. Sleepless nights, constant feedings, dirty diapers. I threw myself into fatherhood with everything I had. I wanted to be the kind of dad who never made his son doubt he was wanted. Melanie, though, seemed distant. She cared for the baby, yes, but I caught her staring at her phone late at night, scrolling, smiling faintly. Once, when I walked into the room, she locked the screen too quickly. My blood turned to ice. Was she still in contact with him? One morning, I picked up the baby while she showered. Her phone buzzed with a notification. I shouldn't have looked. I know that, but I did. It was a message from R. "I miss you. Can we talk?" My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I put it back exactly as it was and held my son tighter, his tiny head nestled against my chest. She came out of the shower, humming, and froze when she saw my face. "What?" she asked, eyes wide. "Still him?" I whispered. Her lip trembled. "Alex!" I laughed, bitter and broken. "You swore it was over. You swore on our child. And you're still—" "I didn't reply," she screamed. "I didn't. He keeps reaching out. I can't control that." "Then block him," I roared. She collapsed into tears, but I felt nothing but cold fury. We tried counseling. For months, we sat in that sterile office while a woman with kind eyes asked us to communicate our feelings. Melanie cried, apologized, swore she was committed. I nodded, pretended to believe. But inside, I was already gone. Every time I looked at her, I saw the hotel receipts, the secret messages, the night she told me she was out walking when she was with him. Every time she kissed me, I wondered if she was thinking of him. Trust, once broken, doesn't grow back. It rots. One night, when our son was almost a year old, I put him to bed and sat in the dark nursery until my heart steadied. Then I walked into the living room. "I want a divorce," I said. She looked up from the couch, her face drained of color. "What? No, Alex, please. We're better now. We're not," I cut her off. "I don't trust you. I don't believe you. And I can't raise our son in a house where his father lies awake every night wondering if his wife is sneaking around again." She sobbed, begged, clung to me. But my heart was stone. The papers were filed a week later. It's been 2 years now. My son is the light of my life. Every weekend he's with me, we build Lego castles, chase the dog in the yard, read bedtime stories until he falls asleep on my chest. He's mine. No test could ever make me doubt that now. As for Melanie, we co-parent. That's all. The woman I once loved is gone, replaced by a stranger who chose secrets over family. I still feel the scar of her betrayal. I don't know if I'll ever trust like that again. But I know this. I will never let her lies define me as a father. My son will always know that I fought for him. The first months after I filed felt like living in a house where someone had rearranged all the doors in the night. I kept reaching for knobs that weren't there. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment 12 minutes from the old place so I could make drop-offs easy. The spare room became a half nursery, half storage space. Pack and play in the corner, flat-packed IKEA boxes leaning against the wall because I was too stubborn to ask my brother for help and too tired to build everything in one go. On my nights alone, I learned the geography of silence. On my nights with my son, the silence never showed up. It was filled with his babble, the whir of the white noise machine, the little dinosaur lamp that gave the room a soft green glow. Co-parenting started like most things do, with optimism and a Google Doc. We wrote down a schedule, color-coded weeks, traded lists of routines. Consistency is key, we told each other like we were studying for a test. The reality was messier. There were late drop-offs, misread texts, the inevitable cold that turned into an ear infection at 2 in the morning. We argued about tiny things that wore costumes that made them look big, how long he should nap, whether he should have blueberries if he had a diaper rash. Every disagreement hummed with the sound of the old betrayal, even when neither of us said the word. I changed how I spoke to her. Short sentences, fewer metaphors, hard facts. I'll pick him up at 5,030. He took 6 ounces at 35 teen. He napped from 12,045 to 2,005. No hearts, no jokes. We installed a parenting app that time-stamped messages and stored medical info. It felt clinical, and maybe that was the point. A sterile room is hard to contaminate. The first time she called me in a panic after the divorce was on a Wednesday that smelled like rain. "He has a fever," she said, breathless. "It's 12.4. I'm going to the ER." "I'm 5 minutes away," I said, already grabbing my keys. "Meet me at the entrance." We were two halves of a broken thing standing under fluorescent lights. Our son was hot and clingy, his eyes glassy, his small hand fisted in my hoodie. I talked to the triage nurse because Melanie couldn't stop crying, and I remembered the birth and felt the old ache and the new steel, both at once. The doctor said it was a virus and an ear infection. We traded places in the hard chair. I sang the same 2 songs I always sing because I only know the chorus of everything. Melanie stroked his hair and said she was sorry without specifying what for, and I said, "It's okay," in the small, practical way that means we're getting through this hour. We left with pink antibiotics and a list of instructions. At the curb, she whispered, "You're good at this." I wanted to tell her that being good at this was all I'd wanted, and that she had turned that want into a courtroom exhibit. Instead, I kissed my son's forehead and said, "Text me in the morning with his temp." The mornings got simpler. Coffee, a small hand grabbing at my jeans, a lunchbox I was weirdly proud of. Banana coins, tiny turkey roll-ups, the pretzels shaped like letters. I learned how to pack a diaper bag like an engineer. I learned that stain remover is a liar if you wait more than 10 minutes. I learned which playgrounds had shade at 5 p.m. and which dads would talk to you and which dads would nod at you like you're both in a quiet club. About 6 months after the papers, I saw him. The letter R in skin and bone at the farmer's market next to a table of honey. At first, I didn't recognize him. Men who exist as threats in your head rarely match the shape of their real bodies. He was ordinary. He wore a navy ball cap and a t-shirt advertising a charity 5K. He glanced up, and our eyes hit like 2 magnets that had lost their charge. There was a moment when we could have pretended we didn't see each other. We didn't take it. "Alex," he said, cautious, as if the name might set off an alarm. "Yeah," I said. The sun was too bright. I shifted my son on my hip, and he hid his face in my neck, and everything in me said, "Not in front of him, not here." He raised a hand in a small gesture that wasn't quite a wave. "I'm not going to make this weird. He swallowed. "I'm sorry." The words landed and slid around, looking for purchase. "Does that do anything?" I asked, too tired to sand the edge off. "Hearing you say it?" He took off his cap and ran a hand over his hair, buying time. "Maybe not, but it's true." I told myself a story, that she was in a bad marriage, that I was rescuing someone smart and sad, that we were whatever people say when they don't want to look in the mirror. I ruined my own life telling that story. Thought you should know, I know it. It would have been easy to hate him if he'd smirked, if he'd looked like the villain. He looked like a person who'd also crawled out of a wreck. I didn't forgive him. That's not what that was, but the heat dropped a few degrees. "My kid doesn't need any more stories," I said. "He needs naps and sunscreen and 2 adults who can count to 10 before they talk." He nodded. "I'm not in her life," he said quickly, a preemptive answer to a question I hadn't asked. "Haven't been for a long time. I'm trying to be better at being boring." "Good," I said, and meant it. He stepped back. I bought honey I didn't need. Later, I told my therapist about it, Hannah, who had become a quiet metronome in my life. She asked how it felt, and I said, like seeing the blueprint of a building I'd only ever lived inside. "Does the blueprint help?" she asked. "Or does it make you want to find every flaw?" I said both. We both smiled in the sad way people do when they are right and it doesn't fix anything. There were other small tests. The first time I dropped my son at Melanie's and a man's jacket hung on a chair. The first time I saw a pair of men's running shoes by her door that weren't mine. Nothing dramatic happened. There were no shouting matches in the hallway, no door slams that woke the baby. She looked at me like someone waiting to see if a grenade would go off. I looked at my son and tied his shoe and said, "Text me if he's fussy after the nap." The grenade stayed cold. Later, alone, I sat on my couch and let the anger run through me like electricity until it burned out. Then I did the dishes. People talk about closure like it's a graduation ceremony, like you walk across a stage in a funny hat and someone gives you a piece of paper that says, "You are now done." I never found the stage. Closure came the way fog lifts, unremarkable and late, a patch at a time. One morning, I realized I had driven past the hotel we used to fight about and hadn't noticed. One night, I scrolled through my camera roll to find a photo of my son's first birthday and didn't see the ultrasound pictures in my mind first. The knife dulled. It didn't disappear, but it stopped cutting me every time I turned around. Melanie tried once more to pull me back into the old orbit. It was spring blue air, the first days you can leave the jacket in the car and not regret it. She asked if we could talk after a drop-off. We sat on the front steps while our son banged measuring cups together in the kitchen like a small percussionist with a grudge. "I'm sorry," she said, and there was a texture to it that hadn't been there before. Less performative, more oxygen, not the way I said it before, not the "I'm sorry," but just, "I did something that I don't know how to forgive myself for. You were good to me. I made you doubt the best thing about yourself. I made you doubt you were a father." It felt like a precise needle going in where a blunt instrument had been before. I looked at her face, the new fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her hair was pulled back like she was bracing herself. "I don't know what to do with that," I said. "Thank you for saying it. That's all I've got." She nodded. "I've been going to therapy," she said, a sentence that could be a brag or a confession depending on the tone. She kept it a confession, trying to understand why I chose the worst door. "I won't ask you to come back. I won't ask you to tell me it wasn't that bad. It was that bad." For the first time since the ultrasound, I felt something unstick between us, some old need to be vindicated loosening its grip. I didn't forgive her, but I didn't need her to pay for it every time we needed to decide whether to switch to whole milk. "I'm glad you're doing the work," I said. "Not for me, for him." "For him," she echoed. The measuring cups went silent. In the kitchen, our son looked up through the pass-through and grinned with both his new teeth. We both waved, the way divorced people sometimes move in unison without meaning to. Work changed too. I got slower. I stopped volunteering for every Saturday emergency. I started running in the mornings, slow, ugly laps around the lake that with time made me feel like a person made of something elastic, not glass. I built the IKEA furniture. It felt good to turn a pile of indecipherable pieces into a bookshelf that held something. I found a group of single parents who met at a park on Sundays and talked about car seats and court dates and which pediatricians answered the portal messages fastest. We didn't talk about betrayal much. We talked about snacks that travel well and how to fold a stroller with one hand while holding a tantrum in your arm. There is a holiness in the practical. I dated once, twice. I sat across from a woman who worked in city planning and knew the names of every street tree, and I liked the sound of her laugh and the way she paid attention. I told her on the second date that I was slow, that I was a man who had to count to 10 before kissing anyone, not because of shyness, but because of scar tissue. She said she respected that, and I believed her. Then my son got croup and I texted her at 11 p.m. from a steamy bathroom while he breathed like a small train, and she said, "Want me to drop off soup on your porch?" And I thought, maybe the world is not only punishment. We went on a third date at a museum where you can touch all the science, and my son pointed at a giant model heart and said, "Dad, heart." And I didn't cry, but it was a close call. I never became one of those men who make their pain a flag. I never posted a manifesto about deceit. I never referred to all women like they were a single suspect. I became boring, in the best way. We all returned to a baseline eventually. Mine was a man who wants the dishes done and the kid fed and the lawn mowed if there is a lawn. Sometimes I missed the intensity, the way crisis makes every color louder. Then I remembered how quiet a calm room can be when you aren't inventorying every sound for danger. On the anniversary of the day we opened the email from the lab, I took my son to the zoo. He fed a giraffe and laughed so hard he scared a pigeon. On the drive home, he fell asleep in the car seat, his hand open on his lap, and I sat in the parking lot in the sun for 5 minutes longer than I had to, listening to the soft rasp of his breath. I thought about probability, about the number we had lived under for so long, 99999, and how certainty can feel like a blanket and a rope at the same time. Then I thought about how many things in my life that really matter have never come with a number. We are a species hungry for percentages. Sometimes the only way out is to put down the calculator. I still see Melanie at pickups. Sometimes she looks tired in the way that means I am doing my best and it is not enough today. Sometimes she looks genuinely light, and I hope it's because our son told a joke only a 2-year-old can make and she laughed until she had to sit down. We exchange weather reports and school forms and notes about a rash that might be from the new detergent. Once, after a pediatrician appointment we both attended, we stood next to each other by the elevator and she said, "He has your smile." I said, "He has your stubborn," and we both laughed because it was safe to, because the laugh wasn't a bridge to anything. I don't believe the gym is holy anymore. I don't believe phones are devils. I believe in boring routines and difficult conversations sooner than feels polite. I believe in asking, "Are we okay?" before the answer is expensive. I believe in reading aloud to a kid who keeps turning the pages backward. I believe that if you are going to build a fortress, you better also build a gate you both have a key to, and if one person starts hiding keys in new pockets, you stop and empty the pockets together. There's one memory I keep that you'd think I would have thrown away: the first ultrasound. The grainy flicker, the sound like a tiny horse racing. I keep it because it is clean. It's the last moment before anything broke. I used to look at it and feel like I was touching a ghost. Now I look at it and think, you can love the beginning and still choose the middle where you are. The ending is being written every day anyway. If you're listening to this and thinking you can outlogic a lie, you can't. If you're listening and thinking you can outrun one, you can't do that either. You can only stop and ask for the thing you're afraid to need, the truth, before it's too late. And if you already missed that exit, you can learn the geography of the new house. It will feel wrong at first. The doors will be where you don't expect. Then one morning you'll reach out and find a knob where your hand is, and you'll open it, and behind it there'll be a small boy wearing mismatched socks asking for pancakes, and you will think, maybe this is the room I was meant to live in all along. I tuck my son into bed in my apartment with the dinosaur lamp, and he asks for one more story, and I tell him about a truck that learned how to be soft, and he laughs because trucks can't be soft, and I tell him this one can. When he falls asleep, I stand in the doorway and listen. The house doesn't make the old sigh anymore. It breathes like a body that has calmed down, and in that quiet, I say goodnight to a man who once thought betrayal would kill him, and I tell him he made it home. So that's my story. What do you think? Was I right to demand the DNA test and finally end the marriage, or should I have tried harder to forgive for the sake of the child? I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Share your opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this.